Our group will be discussing Chapter 5 on the kinds of practice and feedback that enhance learning. This chapter opens with 2 anecdotes from professors highlighting issues with student improvement despite extensive feedback. For example, Professor Cox, who teaches a public policy course, requires frequent writing assignments but says that his students' work fails to improve despite practice and detailed feedback. In the case of Professor Straight, students prioritize the aesthetics of their presentations over the depth of argument, even though she thought that she was clear in her instructions. And so what lies at the heart of these stories is the misallocation of time and effort, leading to frustration and unmet expectations on both sides. This chapter aims to show why practice in these cases does not make perfect and discusses the types of practice and feedback that can truly enhance learning. An important principle that the chapter builds on is the importance of aligning practice with learning goals and making sure that feedback is targeted.
Optimize learning and performance through practice. The research shows that students should engage in practice that focuses on a specific goal or criterion, targets an appropriate level of challenge, and is performed often enough to meet performance goals. The research shows that deliberate practice towards specific goals allows for students to be more focused in their learning. These goals should be provided by the instructor and be concrete and directive. Having these goals set by the instructor allows for them to monitor the student's progress, as well as have specific performance criteria in order to avoid any miscommunication. Students' practice should be at an appropriate level of challenge and accompanied by support. The research indicates that identifying the appropriate level of challenge for students can be done through one-on-one tutoring, which may be time-consuming, but avoids cases where novices are given tasks that are too challenging. This avoids students from hindering their learning by attempting to tackle tasks that are too difficult for them. The best way to support students through this level of challenge is instructional scaffolding. This is when students are supported through a practice activity for target skills at an appropriate challenge level. This can be done through groups, instructor support, or other resources like written prompts in order to help the students get through these activities. Ensuring that students have an appropriate level of challenge can boost motivation and help them achieve flow, which is a state of consciousness where they are engaged and enjoy a task. Lastly, a sufficient quantity of high-quality practice is needed to achieve benefits through practice. As it is hard for students to see performance increases at the early and late stages of learning, instructors need to highlight their growth in order to motivate them and inform them that their practice is actually paying off.
Some strategies that instructors can use for effective practice include: 1. Conduct a prior knowledge assessment to target an appropriate challenge level. This way, instructors can understand where students are coming from at the beginning of the course and tailor the material to their existing understanding. 2. Be more explicit about your goals in your course materials. 3. Use a rubric to specify and communicate performance criteria so students know what's expected of them. And 4. Build multiple opportunities for practice. So instead of a single large homework assignment, having multiple assignments spread out across the week so students have opportunities to practice frequently at lower stakes is a good idea. Number 4, build scaffolding into assignments. This is providing support for students when they need it, but also support that is removed when they no longer need it. 5, set expectations about practice so they understand how much they're being expected to practice on a weekly basis. 6, give examples or models of target performance. 7, show students what you do not want. And 8, refine your goals and performance criteria as the course progresses. So at specific milestones, check in on your goals and the performance criteria to make sure that it's matching the expectations that are being given in the course.
The research findings for feedback essentially frame feedback as a map for students to help them situate themselves within their learning journey towards their designated learning level that they're trying to achieve. There are 2 key points for effective feedback, which we'll delve into soon. The first one being content. Content should communicate to students where they stand. So content should be precise and specific about the shortfalls of students and where they're doing well and where they should focus more efforts. The second point is timing. Teachers should provide feedback that is timely and frequent, and they should provide this feedback when students can make the most of it. So not near the end of an assignment or project, rather at the beginning. So the first point is content. There are two types of feedback. There's formative feedback, which is during the learning process, and summative, which is near the end, a final grade or score. And so effective feedback involves giving a clear picture of how a student is doing, and it should be specific, targeted, and it should be frequent. However, too much feedback can overwhelm students. The timing of feedback is also important. So how soon feedback is given is quite important. The research points that early feedback is quite effective since students can quickly course correct. And frequent feedback also is quite effective as it makes sure students are not lost on their learning journey. And feedback should ultimately be provided when students will most likely use it. So the content and timing strategies of feedback should be tailored to the learning project and the individual students that a teacher is dealing with.
So within feedback strategies, we've identified 8 of them in which we can find ways how to successfully incorporate feedback so that future student performance is optimized. So the first one would just be to look for patterns of error in student work. So this would help educators address common misconceptions or gaps in understanding among students, which would allow for more targeted and efficient feedback that addresses root issues. So the second is to prioritize feedback. So the third one is balance strengths and weaknesses within given feedback. So offering a more balanced view of both of these aspects would foster a more positive learning environment and would also motivate students. So acknowledging strengths would reinforce good practices while also addressing weaknesses would promote growth. The fourth is to design frequent opportunities to give feedback. So this could involve creating an ongoing dialogue between students and educators, which would promote continuous improvement and allow for more timely adjustments and also reduce the likelihood of students repeating their errors. The fifth one is to provide feedback at a group level. So this would really encourage collaboration and shared responsibility, and also emphasize collective success while also identifying areas of improvement that might be common among group members. The sixth strategy is to provide real-time feedback at the group level, which allows for immediate course corrections and reinforces positive behaviors or identify issues before they become ingrained or a habit. The seventh strategy is to incorporate peer feedback. So this would foster a great sense of community while also empowering students to engage in the evaluation process. So this would really enhance students' critical thinking skills and provide more diverse perspectives, which is really what we're looking for. And the last strategy is to require students to specify how they will use the feedback in the future. So this would allow students to really reflect and articulate on how they'll apply their feedback in future assignments. So this would really ensure that this feedback becomes a tool for growth rather than just a simple assessment, but something to apply on their assignments going forward.
In conclusion, moving past the practice makes perfect mentality, we discussed the nuances of practice and feedback that improve the education process for both teachers and students. It's not merely about the quantity of practice or volume of feedback, but rather the quality and specificity of these efforts that count. And so effective practice is characterized by its focus on a specific goal. It challenges students just enough to stretch their abilities without overwhelming them, and it also must be ample and frequent to give students the necessary time to learn. Effective feedback makes sure to show students where they stand in relation to goals and is delivered when it is most actionable by students. And so when practice and feedback are designed with these principles in mind, they work in harmony and guide students towards their goals in a more intentional and effective way.